Welcome to Divine Feminine Voices. Women's empowerment is on the rise. My next guest, Sande Hart, the founder of S.A.R.A.H and the General Congress of Women, is going to talk about why that should matter to us. Sande Hart is a mother, grandmother, sister, writer, and author, and founding president of S.A.R.A.H, the Spiritual and Religious Alliance for Hope. This is a women's international organization now in its 19th year. She is also an online event producer and workshop facilitator. And she says all programs and initiatives she is involved with must be creative, fun, and designed to tug at the deep roots of systems of domination and patriarchy, replacing them with a healthy ecosystem of care and caregiving and women's empowerment. Sande is a social artist who paints with people and new ideas to solve old problems. We have had so many wonderful conversations, Sande. I'm so excited to have you here and open up those conversations to so many of the people I care about and love, including you. So let's go.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, really.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's talk about something you shared with me early on when we met, that my understanding was you were inspired to close the gap between women of various religions and spiritual practices. And that inspired something, that inspired an initiative. So would you talk with us about that?
Yeah, and let me just say, I wanted to fill that gap by expanding it. I wanted to expand that gap, actually, so it was fraught with respect and love and understanding. And where we found our common values was in our shared love of our tradition. And yet we could celebrate our differences and honor our commonalities in that gap, in that space. Yes, after the events of, the morning of the events of 9/11, I woke up to what everybody was seeing on the news that morning. And somewhere between the first building and the second building getting hit by an airplane, I heard "gather women." And I didn't know what that meant. I wasn't necessarily involved. I wasn't involved with any organizational body of women. I had never really been in a circle of women before. I had sisters, but I didn't really know what sisterhood was in this way. And so I said yes, and proceeded on the journey to find out what that meant to gathering women. I just instinctively knew that it was really necessary to pull together women, as if I already knew that the solutions to the world's problems are in circles of women. And we called her S.A.R.A.H as the mother of all nations, and made her an acronym, the Spiritual and Religious Alliance for Hope. And that was 19 years ago. So here over the years, we've had hundreds of circle conversations, meetings, countless community events, programs and initiatives. We've been called on for panels and did some incredible community work in Orange County, California. And then when COVID hit, we went entirely online, and everything changed for us in terms of the direction and the needs we were filling. And so it became a sacred responsibility, as well as an opportunity to just expand in this new way. So that's S.A.R.A.H in a nutshell, that we do conform to our highest and deepest values. We have sets of principles that we conform to that I honestly believe is what has to attribute our 19 years of sustainability. It's based on these very simple elements, essential elements.
We'll talk about those, the four essential elements, and why are they so important?
Yeah, so actually, this brings us really to the General Congress of Women. If I can actually share that with you, the General Congress of Women was really first seated about 15 years ago when I first heard about the Mother's Day proclamation and the real meaning of Mother's Day. And it wasn't a day to bring your mom flowers and on her and gifts, but it was mother's protest against the atrocities of the United States Civil War. And it was 150 years ago where Julia Ward Howe wrote the anchoring proclamation for that time called the Mother's Day Proclamation. And in 2016, a friend of mine, Joan Marie, who sadly has recently passed away, knowing that the 150th anniversary was coming in the year 2020, she wanted to do something creative to start really focusing on that anniversary. And so together we created Vision 2020, an initiative that that was designed to do just that, to bring advocacy and awareness of what where we were 150 years ago and compared to where we were today. And Joan was really very interested in the one sentence of the Declaration that says we will not have questions decided by irrelevant agencies, or women will have their own agency. So that Vision 2020 initiative was quite successful. Yet all along, it was actually the final paragraph of the Mother's Day Proclamation that really spoke to me. And I'm getting to our 4 essential elements because it's how we answered that call. But let me tell you may I read to you what that 4th paragraph of the Mother's Day Proclamation is? It's just 4 paragraphs. It's not long, but boy, it packs a punch, Misa. It says, in the name of womanhood and of humanity, I earnestly ask that a General Congress of Women without limit of nationality may be appointed and held at some place deemed most convenient and at the earliest period consistent with its objects to promote the alliance of different nationalities, the amicable settlement of international questions, and the great and general interest of peace. And I thought, women of all nations. Well, that's S.A.R.A.H, and talk about sacred responsibility. And here we are, officially at the 2020th anniversary of the 150th anniversary of the Mother's Day Proclamation. And it's time to answer the call to create a General Congress of Women. So we started looking around. We thought, well, what would it be? Well, what we want to do is we don't want to be another organization of women. We're already doing that. We don't need to create another platform for that. We don't want to water down what other women are doing. We don't want to water down what we're doing, but we know what works. So we lifted up these elements that we identified as being our success model, but we didn't notice them until we started looking at what other grassroots organizations were doing or not doing to ensure their sustainability. Because over the years, I noticed that grassroots organizations were falling apart. They were coming together with the most noble and holy of intentions. They were enthusiastic. They came in with a splash. They were doing incredible work with really great, noble, goals. Yet they were falling apart. So when I started looking at what were those essential reasons they were falling apart, they happened to be the same. They started matching up to the exact same 4 that we attribute to our success. And those essential elements are circle principles. I was starting to see that when I was going to other people's meetings or been invited to their events, I was noticing they weren't really operating in circle principles. There was a hierarchy. There was that not everybody was being heard. It felt like creativity was thwarted, with exception to a few who were at the head of of that particular organization. So circle principles were something that the first thing that we applied, and that is how to be in circle with one another. Right. The second was financial resiliency. I mean, that was a really big issue because grassroots and peace seekers like us typically aren't good about asking for money. Mm-hmm. There is this common feeling that, well, this is just peace. This is God's work, right? We can't charge for it, even though it comes with years of experience, education, time and energy. There was still that breakdown between value and and what we, what we were paying for. And so we actually are still learning that. We're getting better at that, but it's something that we've managed to do a pretty good job at. But we're getting better. And then the other element is recognizing our interrelated nature, the ecosystem of our interdependence with others. I started to see that organizations that are involved in environmental causes aren't really connecting up well with mental health and economic, parity. I wasn't seeing those working on homelessness really working well with, or looking at the impact their work was having on the environmental groups. So that's a problem. And if you're not working in that ecosystem, you don't have the support that you could have if you did. And there's a lot of power in that. And that's something we've always done a really good job at. And then finally, and this might not surprise you, maybe it will, but the number one reason organizations from my experience, fall apart was personal internal issues, personality problems. Somebody gets their, excuse the expression, they get their panty in a twist. Somebody gets upset or hurt. They don't have the mechanism to say, ouch, that hurts, or I don't feel heard, or, hey, I'd like to contribute my voice to this circle. And so they just leave. A lot of people just pack up and leave, or the founder dissolves everything. So we have what's called agreements for care and caregiving. And these very simple principles were gifted to me by Hereditary Chief Phil Lane Jr., as passed down through his Lakota Dakota heritage of protocol for reconciliation. Mm-hmm. How do you come together? What are the steps for caring for one another? And so those 4 elements have served us very, very well at S.A.R.A.H. And it's really the foundational framework for the General Congress of Women, which is our main sale at S.A.R.A.H.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that too, a little bit more about what the General Congress of Women is doing and what S.A.R.A.H. is doing. But you've spoken to some things that are really significant. I don't know if you know, I used to have a background in development. I'm sorry, that was funny. That's not what I meant to say. Organizational development, and I tried to flip it and it wasn't working. So absolutely. When you're shifting from domination forms of business or organization or governance or initiatives, and you want to incorporate feminine principles, and you want it to be one in which all parties are valued, that is a whole different set of essential elements than we're typically used to. And I'm really very much appreciating how you broke that down, how you saw the very areas where we as individuals who start nonprofit foundations or start initiatives really need to be aware that there's some management principles that have to be in place in order to be successful.
And it's really that easy, right? It's not laborious. It's not, it really is just being careful and mindful with what you're doing and shifting some habits. And because you're in circle, and because you have those agreements for care and caregiving, and because you've already agreed to the principles of our interdependence, and also breaking through that uncomfortable ask for money for what you're doing till it becomes comfortable, mm-hmm. and you stand in that power. It's very organic. It really is very organic. And for us, it's been easy because we have been just doing it. It's been embedded from the very beginning. Yeah.
I'm really glad you spoke to that financial piece, because that comes up a lot more with women, in my experience, than it ever did with men.
Okay.
And I think it comes from generations of not needing to make money for the family. Our focus was different for hundreds of years. So feeling that worthiness, that self-confidence that says, wait a minute, in order to take care of my family, myself, my organization, my sacred work, in this culture, there must be a form of exchange, and stand with that.
Right. And I love, you just had Rianne Eisler on your on this call.
Yep.
And in her book, The Real Wealth of Nations, we are what we value. So we have to start valuing the work that we're doing ourselves. So it doesn't become an apologetic plea. You can hear a difference in your voice.
That's right.
Yeah, it's really
That's right. And when we as women get comfortable with our value, you're exactly right. Our demeanor, our voice, our way of engaging changes.
Everything.
Yeah.
It changes everything.
Absolutely. And then
It all starts here. Oh, sorry.
Well, that's right. It empowers us to be in heartfelt, heart-focused initiatives. It doesn't mean giving up that part of our power or worthiness. We don't have to do that to be in circular relationship, which is a value I really see embodied in S.A.R.A.H and the General Congress of Women. So the General Congress of Women is an initiative that was born from S.A.R.A.H, correct?
That's right.
Talk to us about what it is and how it serves women's empowerment.
Yeah. So to join the General Congress of Women, you can either already have formed a circle, and that might just be working fine for you, or you're looking to start a circle. Either way, these principles adapt and lay over what you're already doing, or can support you as you grow from the ground up. And the idea of the General Congress of Women is to do just that, to apply these 4 principles to what you're already doing. Like I said, we didn't want to go start another network. We certainly don't want to be an umbrella organization of that sort of a network. We don't need that. As a matter of fact, those hierarchical models are gone. Those are so yesterday, and we don't want to see that. I run from that. And I certainly, but what we can do is we can host a constellation of organizations. So we can be we can serve as a bonding agent. So, for example, we have a number of organizations that were 3 that are already existing and 1 that is brand new. And the 3 and we're really new at this. We just only started in the beginning of this year. So. And the 3 we have are the 4 that we have are phenomenal. The 3 were already existing, and those were they just applied our principles, and now they all come together periodically, or we hear about what they're doing, and that we get to watch how they're accelerating their goals, right? And then we also learn from each other.
These are organizations using circular practices. Organizations or businesses or groups of women using more circular practices. And then there's interconnectedness. There are places where there's sharing occurring, and education, because you've been doing several educational forums.
Yeah, they apply the 4 principles, basically, which are the circle principles, the agreements for care and caregiving, financial resiliency, or financial wholeness, and the ecosystem of our interdependence, which is just a commitment to pay attention. But we can help with connectivity. We can help with bringing, let's say they don't know anybody working in environmental sustainability, and they really want to have somebody either come and consult with them, or sit on their board, or sit in their circle, or just have a conversation with. And so we can serve in that capacity to support them when they call on us. And yes, we in the beginning of the year, we started our series on our General Congress of Women calls, and each call, which you have been a very important featured speaker on, we host a thought leader, expert, author to speak about the theme of that particular month, which is one of the 12 critical areas of concern, which come from the United Nations Beijing 12 critical action platform. And that was a set of goals set up by the UN Women, by women, for women, on issues that impact them, from women in health, from women in conflict, war and conflict, from women in economics, women in health and well-being, which you were a speaker on. And so there are 12 themes. And so each month we host a different speaker. And it's also really important here to understand that everything we do is framed in a certain deep wisdom, and that doesn't come from us. The only ones that can bring that to us are the Indigenous grandmothers or elders. So every call is hosted by an Indigenous elder or grandmother, and who open, close, and also share her wisdom with us on our calls. So those are just a few of the ways that we support our congresses. And whoever wants to come to the calls, they're every month on the 21st. And we're coming to the end in December. I'm already, it's something bittersweet. Yeah, but we'll pick up with new goodies in 2022.
Indeed. And having participated in the way that I did, there's a beautiful confluence of thought and prayer and presence and interaction within every call that I was very impressed by. So coming is a place to get nourished, and it's also a place, if you're so inclined, to contribute, in those circles. And that's lovely. You don't always see that combined. It's powerful.
Thank you. And I attribute my cohorts. I haven't mentioned yet that I'm here speaking to you, but when I speak of we, it's Ann Smith and Larissa Ava. And so the three of us, we do spend 3 weeks preparing, but we keep that platform. We want to make sure that we check each other. We check our agreements for care and caregiving. We're practicing circle principles. We're doing it ourselves. We're living it ourselves. And it sometimes can be a stretch.
Yes. Yes, it is.
We're human. And yet we don't pack up our toys. We do what we have to do because, that we love one another, and that is our bonding agent. And we hope that's a bonding agent. That's all that really matters, right, Misa?
But you're committed to principles that are taking you into more heartfelt conversations and more heartfelt welcoming, as you said, you're not in there trying to change all of us with our different spiritual viewpoints or economic viewpoints or political viewpoints. But you're saying, isn't it wonderful that we can come together for something greater and even define what is greater together? And I was watching a call where you could hear the women in a little bit of tug of war, and it was good, because shouldn't we be able to have differences of thought and feeling and opinion and yet still come together in respect for each other?
Yeah, and if we don't speak up where that rub is, we're not being authentic to ourselves, and we're not being fair to the other. And when you can do it in an environment that's safe, because you've agreed to it in the beginning, whoever comes into our organization has to agree to the care and caregiving. We don't do it when things start getting a little hairy. We do it when we're in the honeymoon stage. We do it before you step over the threshold, because now you've said it's okay, right? And I've agreed to this. I've given you permission to come to me. Pull me aside. Let's not do it in front of everyone. Pull me aside. And let's have this conversation because I care. And I'm not, I want to, let's heal this before it becomes a big, gaping issue.
Absolutely. And that's that deep respect, respect that's so awesome in an organization, in my experience. It's what binds us, keeps us unified in our actions. You've also attracted some other powerful women into the circle that some of our listeners might recognize and know. Would you mention some of the women and perhaps even what they brought to S.A.R.A.H efforts?
Oh my gosh, my heart just swelled. I might even start crying. You, Misa Hopkins, let's just start from there. Jean Shinoda Bolin has been Oh my goodness. She's been such a force of nature in my life. Since I read Urgent Call from Mother, Gather the Women and Save the World, 2 years into S.A.R.A.H. Get that book. It is, and every other book that Jean has written, if I may say so. Jean Bolin has been a regular presence for us at S.A.R.A.H, but definitely has helped us greatly on the General Congress of Women calls. Karamba Rangara, this angel from Kenya. Oh, this amazing, extraordinary human being. We recently hosted Nina Simons from Pioneers. She's just a treat. She's just a treat. Humility and so much creativity and so much wisdom. Of course, Rianne Eisler. Rianne has been another really important woman in my life. And we actually did a really amazing Passover Seder together. Framed on her 4 cornerstones. So that's found on our website. Oh my gosh, I'm just all afluster right now because we have so many. Claire Dubois from Tree Sisters, another force of nature. Grandmother Florida Mayo was the first grandmother that really entered my life, one of the original 13 Indigenous grandmothers. And her daughter, Heather Hall Dudney Stone. I know I got her acronyms wrong. I mean, her names wrong in the wrong order. I apologize. Just a whole long list of great grandmother Mary Lyons. So we could just go on and on. I have their names and their images are on the General Congress of Women page on our site. But everyone has been so significant to the growth of S.A.R.A.H. They don't just show up, and we listen very carefully to what they say, what you say. I should also say that the women who come to our calls, we have what we call after parties after every call, because the voices of the women who might not come with any notoriety, who may not be familiar to any of your listeners, but are just equally profoundly impactful, that show up on our calls. And either they're reoccurring or they're first time, but their wisdom is heard too. And that after party, we bring everybody onto the call like they're a presenter. Everybody, we move into the meeting platform out of the webinar platform. And so that's a really important part. I think there's only been one exception where we didn't do an after party. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's so beautiful. I'm glad you shared some of the names of women, because I wanted our viewers to have a sense of this. You're attracting women making a difference in the world. And when you recognize a woman in the world and she's part of a circle, that's reassuring. When you say, I value those things that she's written about, that she's spoken about, and this woman has written about and spoken about, it's like, you know, the values of the organization by the women that it attracts. And I love that you're so aware that every woman's voice matters. You don't have to be well known to have a voice that matters. All of them do. And see, this is just one of the things I love about the organization. These are circle values.
Right.
We all matter.
But can I just say something? What you just said is so important, because when we are, whether we're aware of it or not, we're all vibrating. Those of us who are ready to hear this stuff, including myself, we're all vibrating at a certain level. And I consider myself nothing more than a shard of metal. And it's as if spirit just plunked down a big industrial strength magnet. And we're all just like, woof, wind in the hair, and feet off the ground. And we're all just drawn to one another. I've got full body right now. That's how you came into our life, my life, I should say, our life at S.A.R.A.H, but my life as well, as did Maureen Jones, who introduced us, as did Grandmother Florida Mayo, who is how I met Maureen. So, when we start, we have to pay attention to who our allies and sisters are too. That raises that vibration just a couple octaves higher.
That's right. That's right. Some dear friends of mine, I think you'll appreciate this, talk about being in the stream right now and pausing and looking around to see who is in the stream with you.
Yeah,
that we're
I
in
love
this
that.
flow together. Isn't it beautiful? We are in this flow together. And by the way, my nonprofit New Dream Foundation has agreed at the last board meeting to become a member of the General Congress of Women. So yay!
Hey,
More good juices
great. Yeah,
flowing.
very
Yeah.
good news.
So
Welcome.
I see your work is making an impact. How do you see your work making an impact? What's the evidence of the changes that one might expect coming into this world with you?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. And it's really interesting because of what you said, how we're attracting everyone who shows up makes us better, right? So I could never have imagined yesterday who would have shown up at S.A.R.A.H and impacted us today. I just couldn't, right? So in that way, I know that sounds, warm and fuzzy and, a little out there, but we really don't know entirely. But our as long as women continue to come to our programs and they're meaningful, and we're providing meaningful content, and we're women feel heard. We have an ambassador program too, where you can sign up, and it's not so much a volunteer, although you can volunteer through the ambassador program, and many do, but it's where you come to being one of the layers of our leadership model. And in that leadership model, we meet every other Friday, and the ambassadors, we share what's going on. One of the ambassadors has actually started 2 congresses in Kenya. And as a matter of fact, it was one of our first meetings, if not our first, where collectively they said, we should have our own proclamation at S.A.R.A.H. And we did a visioning. They did their own proclamation, everyone who was there at the time. We did a meditative visioning. And then we created this messy document and whittled it down. Everybody's voice was heard. We moved words around. We moved paragraphs around. We started seeing patterns. That is amazing, exciting process that we took our time doing. And then we stood back and go, oh, wow, this needs to be S.A.R.A.H.'s proclamation. Mm-hmm. And it became S.A.R.A.H.'s proclamation by the ambassadors. And that's on our website too. So I never know. We never know what's going to happen. Every creative program that has come, that is on S.A.R.A.H.'s website right now, has come from who shows up. We have a wisdom series. Maybe you don't have the technology or the care to put the energy into hosting a webinar or a workshop, I should say. But you want to do it. You've got a very specific skill set, and it's a value, and you want to charge money for it. You could do it through our wisdom series. And of course, we want to make sure it's in alignment with everything we're doing, and it works out really well, but then it's all really unique to each presenter. But we just want to as long as we are a platform for women's voices, and we are offering meaningful content, which means women are showing up, and men too, on many of our things that we offer. Some things are women only, because I'm of the belief, and as our leadership, that women need that safe space, and energy flows.
We share that with New Dream Foundation, where we're supporting the ceremonies that we do. And we have also found there needs to be a safe place for women to determine what feminine consciousness is, yes, what sacred feminine is, what feminine empowerment is. Yes. That we've conceded power to men for thousands of years now.
Right.
And there's no judgment in that. That was
right.
Just the structure that occurred. So that safe space, I really want to honor that safe space for women to determine, what is this power that's flowing through us? What is it that's drawing us to this unified magnet, this magnetic field? What is that?
Yeah.
And be able to give words to it, as you did with your team, right?
That's right.
That's a sacred process for women, and the time will come, perhaps, for men. And I love your ambassador program. You spoke to that. I mean, Maureen Jones, you mentioned her, who was taking coursework and doing ceremony with me, and then she introduced us. That is part of the magic of those interconnections that you intended from the very beginning, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I guess. You know, and I mean, it's really interesting because, you know, I'm something of a control freak, you know, as a director of sales and marketing, you know, on 9/10/2001, and I woke up totally rewired on 9/11. But that part of me, that wanting to control things and have my fingers and everything, but it's really interesting because it didn't even take much resolution to come to this understanding that I am okay not knowing. We're okay not knowing.
Yeah.
You know, we know we've got really great programs. We have vision and goals, but they're loose. They're based on what wants to happen too. We'll adjust as we go. We really will.
I hear that organic, in the moment, willing to be in the unknown. Again, these are feminine principles, and you're living them, and you're creating an environment in which women can learn what that feels like, what that experience is like, to really be embraced in those feminine principles in very powerful ways.
Yeah. Well, and apparently it's working.
Okay.
A little proof of concept, 20-year proof of concept.
So where can women go to learn more, to sign up, get involved?
Yeah, SARAforhope.org. Capital, well, it doesn't matter. It's a website, www.SARA4hope.org.
I'm going to type this in right now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we'll have it there, everybody. Below the video, the link will be there. You can just click on the link and go over and take a look at all of the wonderful things that Sande and this marvelous group of women are creating. So do you want to leave us with any last thought, my dear?
I just want to thank everyone who says yes to their calling, that listens carefully, that is, you know, that is in their integrity with who they are, because that is the fastest way to being sustainable and to being in our bliss. And Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss. Follow your bliss. And that takes listening and trust, and a good circle of women really helps.
Indeed, which you have done so brilliantly, brilliantly. Thank you for your incredible work in the world, Sande.
I am so grateful for you and everybody who's listening. Yeah, thanks. It's been a lot of fun.
All right. So everyone, you can get the link to Sande's organization, to S.A.R.A.H, down below. I encourage you, go over and check it out and see what's going on right now. And also, of course, as always, you can get a link to the holding meditation, which is our signature meditation. Sande knows, she's done it with me. You can go get it at one of the links down below. And we love you. We're so glad that you were a part of this journey with us. Goodbye, everyone.